us ice cream and pound cake every time, which we loved. Well, when Miss Walker came, she lived in the house beside the Presbyterian church, which to me was Mr. Clyde Gamble's, Emily and Clyde's. And I walked, as I did everywhere else, to her house twice a week. And listen to this, please. The charge was $5 a month for 2 lessons a week. How did this lady make a living? But she not only taught us piano, she went over to the school, because back in those days, you could do a lot of things without asking the superintendent or the school board. They allowed Ms. Walker to teach private lessons in the auditorium on the school piano throughout the school day for students who rode the bus. And those of us who lived in town went after school and walked for our lessons. In return, she conducted the Glee Club. When I became accomplished enough, I got to accompany the Glee Club, which I loved. And then she would take us to concerts at Winthrop College. It was not a university, in Rock Hill. Every opportunity to expose us to classical music and the arts. And how she found time to do this, I could never imagine. She was organist at the Methodist Church, did all that teaching during the day, taught into the night. Pa Walker, we called her, Ma Walker. She was my second mama. He would fix supper, bring it to her on a tray at the piano, so she kept right on teaching. Played for my wedding, was at the baptism for my son, just adored her. I had a lot of really good teachers. And in my little book that I wrote for my son and my grandson, telling stories about the McCains and the Walkups, I have a chapter about my school and my teachers. And in 1941, the first school, when I was in first grade, burned. It was January, just right after Christmas. The story I heard, and it may or may not be true, the boys were working on an automobile in the shop, which was in the basement, and something went wrong with that car and set the building on fire. Bill Henry was our janitor, maintenance man. He walked to his job, and as he was coming early in the morning, about 5 o'clock, he could see the flames. There was no fire department. What could you do? I don't think anything was saved. Terrible tragedy, really sad, and we were frightened because our house was so near. But you know, we had the most fun going to school in the churches and the empty storefronts, and we had cafeteria in the women's club. So we made it all right through that year, and they hurried. And the school that you see on Providence Street across from the library now, we went in 2nd grade through 12th. 1 through 12 was all in that same building. And graduated in 1952. And my class was the first one to get a trip to Washington after a number of years. I think the senior class had gone. It was a perk for them. They had to earn the money to do it. But we had a wonderful trip that year, our senior year, to Washington. And
where was that, the school located, the one that burned?
Same place this one is, exact same spot. And we had a wooden building that was our gymnasium, which was there a long, long time. I finally found a picture of that. Coldest place in the world to go to a basketball game, because there was a stove at this end and a stove at that end, and so you wore your coat and you sat on your hands to keep from freezing. And I did mention that my brother and sister were athletic. And then, so as not to be totally outdone, I was elected cheerleader my senior year. Oh, I was so thrilled. Felt like I was really on the ball team. Okay, so then I go away to college at Flora McDonald in Red Springs, North Carolina, and made the best friends. And even to this day, and we're going to celebrate our 60th next year, I believe it is, we still get together at least twice a year. That's how close some of us were. So, went to teach in Arlington 3 years, went to California 1 year, got married in July after that 1 year in California, came back to Union County, and have been here ever since, and I'm really glad. And then people remembered me, of course, since I had grown up here, and I got involved with the Women's Club, and not too long ago, 2011, the Women's Club was 100 years old. And for about a year and a half before that, they asked me to work on the history for them. And I had a wonderful committee helping get that done, and we got that published. And we included in the back some blurbs about interesting people who had lived and helped to build our town. So I was really proud of that. And before 2011, I had joined the Women's Club because my mama was still a member. And about early 60s, I guess, Dr. Harry Gamble, who was born here, a Baptist minister who was in Roanoke, Virginia at that time, decided the story of this garden of the Waxhaws really needed to be told. So it was his dream that we have an outdoor drama which became titled Listen and Remember. And for whatever reason, I was first president of the Waxhaw Historical Festival and Drama Association, which Dr. Gamble did all the paperwork for to make us tax-exempt corporation. And not only did we have the drama the whole entire month of June for over 30 years, in the beginning we had a true celebration. And this is a copy I found of our Wissahickee Proclamation Eve. We had a marketplace along the railroad bank, like the town does now in the spring and the fall, and vendors come, and it's art and crafts and food, whatever. All that happened. Our first show was in '65. Margaret Ergel, Haskell's sister, and Alice Neal directed the first one, and we had outstanding people like Larry Sprinkle in our drama. We did. We had no stage. We had no amphitheater. That first production was on the street in front of the old women's club.
And where was the old women's club? Is that still standing?
Yeah, it's still there. I'm not sure what's in it now. There's a restaurant on the corner, and the fire department used to be at the end. It has sort of panels, white carving on the front, and the Rodman building that joins it that has columns, it's in that block right there.
Okay.
It's East North Main Street.
In 1911, when that women's club was first organized, the first meeting was in Miss Charlie Massey's house, which is across the way here, and it's being renovated. I'm not sure who's bought it now, but I can see they're doing quite a bit of work there. So from about 7 ladies, the first membership I think had 15 ladies, and guess what their purpose was? To get rid of bootleg liquor on the streets of Waxhaw, to do away with farm animals within the city limits, like cows and horses. It's okay to have chickens. Oh, and Daddy had live chickens at the back at the store too. And that was one thing my brother did not really enjoy doing. He would have to go out and catch that chicken, bring it back in the store, tie the feet so it wouldn't fly, put a brown paper bag over the head, punch a hole so the head would stick out, and away the lady went with her dinner for Sunday.
Do you ever remember the bootleggers, or does your dad remember that in town?
Oh, I knew the name. Witherspoon, who lived down 75 a little way just before you get to South Carolina. But everybody knew where to go to get it. And we had one family who had brothers who just really, bless their hearts, they were nice as they could be, good electricians. If they were desperate, they'd drink shoe polish. Is that not terrible? If you couldn't find your whiskey. And now what? You can buy a drink in almost any restaurant. There were no restaurants. We had 5 grocery stores down this street where Daddy's store was. Apparently they all made a living. And then Mr. Tyson had one as you're leaving town going toward the new elementary school. Mm-hmm. We had filling stations. Did you ever hear that word? That's a gas station. Had several of those, but no restaurants, not even a cafe.
Do you remember the first restaurant?
We had a policeman named Buck Patterson, whose wife had a little cafe at the end of, well, before you get here, Rivington's, go past Rivington's a little bit, just at the end of that street there. And they did hot dogs and hamburgers. We thought that was wonderful. And Mr. Henry Gamble had a drugstore first across the street where the bike shop is, And then he moved over to the Women's Club building, which was the R.J. Bell Company. So after school, you could get a Coke or whatever, buy aspirin. He was not a registered druggist, so you couldn't get prescriptions, but fun things.
I know there was no movie theater in town. Where would people your age go to the
Well,
movies?
we had several movie theaters. There was a movie theater across the street from one of the Rodman buildings early on called the Rocco.
Oh.
And some of the Niven boys and Nesbitts operated it. And when I was a teenager, we had a movie right near Rivington's. Might actually be the building where Rivington's is. Tickets were 11 cents for children and 35 cents for adults. And popcorn was a dime. So that was a paying job. I worked for Daddy and didn't get paid for a little while. So when I got big enough to pop the corn, I got paid a little bit for doing that at the movie. And then I advanced to ticket clerk. So I got to sit in the little booth. That was wonderful. And the school was allowed to bring children to the movie. We all walked to see Gone with the Wind. If something really terrific came, they would let us come.
Wow. That's amazing. Do you remember how you liked it? Or were you pretty young when that came out?
Well, we appreciated it because we had studied all about the war, but yes, I think we did all appreciate it.
Did your dad ever tell you stories about the time before automobiles came to Waxhaw? Or was he not that old?
I can remember when we still had wagons and horses, yes. And the Plowers had a Ford dealership across the way. Maybe the first one in North Carolina, even. The Plower boys did. And as I said, Daddy had an A model Ford that the family owned. I guess that's one of the first ones. There weren't many cars, no at all. And the first car that my daddy bought was a 52 Chevy, green. We called it the Green Hornet. And we all learned to drive in that car. There was no driver's ed. Dad was the instructor. I learned to do that. What, you have to turn around without being able to back up. What do you call it, a 3-point turn or something? Right down here on 75 going toward the bottom.
Now, do you remember during World War II, was your dad's store affected with the rations?
I found a ration book not long ago and searched for it desperately last night, was able to locate it. I do remember the ration books. Shoes, gasoline, sugar, and I do recall that since there were 3 of us and we were growing, Mom never got any shoes. She had to give us her stamps so that we had shoes. And we did have soldiers in this area. They were on maneuvers down Rehoboth Road. There was a red and a blue army practicing war. And then, we had a prisoner of war camp in Monroe during the war. We had blackouts. The siren would go off, and you had to pull the shades and be still and quiet. But all we had for news was the radio and the newspaper, we didn't have any television. So at Christmas, the ladies in town decided to invite those soldiers who were camped out in a tent to come and spend Christmas with us. And I enjoyed that quite a bit. Getting to know somebody far away, somebody not in Waxhaw.
Did you ever go to the POW camp? Or the prisoner of war camp down
I
there?
never did. I was too young then, but I heard stories about the USO, and the older girls would go and they had dances and all in Monroe to help entertain the soldiers. And even after the war, they let some of those prisoners work on farms while they were here. And some of those boys came back to visit after they had finished business of unpleasantness. And I thought that was really nice that they wanted to come back to Union County.
Speaking about down the road there, when you were younger, did you ever go visit the Andrew Jackson Memorial?
Not when I was younger, but I've been in a number of times since I've been able to drive myself. And for sure, he was born in North Carolina. For sure. Miss Mary Starnes, who is a dear friend, said she had a relative who was invited to go see the baby right after he was born. And she rode with me down to view the monument and told me exactly where the mechanic cabin was, close to that monument. And that had to be a true story, because I believe Miss Mary. I do. But in our drama, because this was, you know, the life of Andrew Jackson as well as the early settlers who came, people from the Waxhaws went to Washington once he was elected president to ask him personally, were you born in North or South Carolina? And his answer was, I was born in the Waxhaws, which was very political, wasn't it? But we still think it must have been good.
And do you remember either one of your parents ever meeting anybody from the Civil War? Any Civil War veterans that were around Waxhaw? Or they might have been too young in the early 1900s?
I do not recall them telling me about it. Possibly they did. And you know, there is a memorial down at Walkersville Presbyterian Church just across from there because there was a little battle there. And in Union County, I think at between Monroe and Wingate, there was a little skirmish. And I have read documents about friends of mine who had relatives that were in the war.
You know, the gold mine, was that part of the town up there? Did you?
Lots of buddies who lived out at the gold mine. Yes, yes. The Plattenbergers and the Blythes, and Joyce Blythe was one of my very best friends in school, was in school with me grades 1 through 12. Her parents were both from out that gold mine. Her mom was a groom, and of course her dad a Blythe. I never got to go down in it. I kind of wanted to, but now I'm not sure how safe it is. And then I did know the people who bought that property, and I assume still own it, and had heard that they might be thinking about reopening it, but I haven't heard anything definite about it. But that was a real plus. That's a historical plus. And out at our museum now, we have a little setup where you can pan for gold and gems, which the children seem to enjoy.
Was that in operation during your lifetime, the gold mine?
Yes, yes. The Jardines were in charge, and they traded with my daddy at the store. And Charlie Patrick married one of our local girls, and he was associated with that. And Jake Helder's father, Jake was related to the lady who ran the switchboard in Duncan McDonald House. So there's family connection with almost everything that happened in Waxhaw.
And do you remember, maybe not the exact year, but do you remember maybe the decade that Waxhaw first got maybe either electricity or telephones? I guess that was in your parents' generation.
Well, we always had electricity. We did not have a phone for a long time. Daddy had one at the store. I remember my piano teacher, first piano teacher, had a windmill in her yard, and this is how they generated power. I think Mr. Collins, who had the horse barn stable, the livery stable, maybe during his time we got first telephones when he was mayor. But I'm sorry, I can't give you that. I know at my house, we were born in that house on the corner. When I was 6, Daddy bought a house for us of our very own on King Street. So we took our belongings and walked across the yard to the new house. We didn't do much moving, just heavy things got in a truck. But we had an outhouse. We had no window plumbing. And we had cold water. Turn a spigot and you get cold water, no hot water. So I can remember all that. And Mom said even the night I was born, they did have power. And your power would be a long cord coming down from the ceiling with a bulb at the end. That was it. So they were really afraid that the power might go out. So Daddy went back to the store, got a kerosene lamp, and I still have the kerosene lamp. That was my birth lamp. Yes, I'm very proud to have that. And on our side of town, the sewage as well, we were the last ones to get sewage, you know, so.
Wow. And what about television? Did you get the
television in the 40s and 50s, I think. All black and white, great big hump things in the back. You know, you had to have a lot of room for a little teeny set, but we loved it. Could watch Matt Dillon and Lum and Abner. And Mom would see her soap operas that she liked.
Would you ever travel to Charlotte? Or would your family travel to Charlotte for shopping or anything?
Daddy went to Charlotte